Welcome to another 49er edition of The Grueling Truth, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, a new interactive football app where you get to call the plays of the offense or defense during a live NFL game and compete with other players across the country. For more information on that, go to www.gridironmo.com. I am your host, Matt Andruscavage, for the 49er Weekly Show, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, former 49er running back, Super Bowl 29 champion, Dexter Carter. How's it going tonight?
Oh, things are great, man. Great to be back with you and, again, to talk about a 49er win. So that's always exciting.
Definitely. Yes, it is Victory Wednesday. At this point, we haven't had a lot of those Wednesdays, but it's nice when we actually do. 49ers coming off a 17-16 win over the Atlanta Falcons, in a game that most people probably picked Atlanta, given their 6-2 record going into the game. Most people did not give the Niners any kind of a chance, especially with Blaine Gabbert starting and all the reserves that were in that game due to all the injuries. It just didn't seem like the kind of a game that Atlanta was going to let slip through their fingers, especially given how Carolina is starting to run away with the division race.
And all those points are absolutely accurate, and I don't think anybody, including myself, gave the Niners an opportunity in that ball game. But what I saw from that team was inspired play. And usually when you see a team inspired, you try to dissect and find out the reasons why they were inspired to play. And, you usually point it at if there's a position change, but there was a lot of new guys in the lineup. And Gabbert played well. And players like Gabbert, coming from a previous situation to where, the light fizzled out and they were looking for a bright spot. Well, Gabbert, in his first game back, played well. And a lot of great points that we'll talk about going through the game. But then you also had, three defensive backs that were key in the 49er win, in my opinion. And usually on the defensive side, quarterback play doesn't inspire them. That great play, comes from guys wanting the opportunity to play, even down to Cromartie, who didn't even know he was going to be playing, I believe, until pregame warm-ups as far as starting. So when you have those guys, you know what? You've got guys that know they could play, guys who, some of them weren't even drafted. They were free agents looking for an opportunity to make a ball club this summer and then come into the season and look for an opportunity to get a chance to play. So for those guys to come in, and in my opinion, actually we're talking about Ward and Johnson and Cromartie. They were three of the top four tacklers in the game. I think Navarro was number two. But defensive backs were 1, 3, and 4 in tackles, in that game. So when you see that inspired play, they had a number of great defensive plays against the pass, even though Ryan still threw for over 300 yards. But those guys, in my opinion, were MVPs in the game based on their play, because they didn't just knock balls down. They came up and made key tackles. So, man, it was a great win for the 49ers, and much more to talk about from that defensive perspective and Gabbert's play also.
Oh, definitely. You make a lot of great points there. The defensive backs I don't think were expected to do very well, especially given injuries to Tremaine Brock and Kenneth Acker, the two guys that have been starting. They haven't been bad this year. They both have, I believe, 3 interceptions. And, yeah, they've both gotten beat occasionally, but they have the play of them, the corners hasn't been, awful, but with them out, for 3 defensive backs to come up and step up, and Jimmy Ward has really been playing. He might be the most improved defensive back on the team. The more reports that are coming out, they're saying he just looks better and better every week, which is really encouraging, especially given the fact that he was a first-round pick, and it's hopeful. It's been hopeful that he was going to make more of an impact, to year 2 coming off an injury. And so far it looks like he's starting to live up to that. So, and like you said, on the offensive side of the ball, Blaine Gabbert looked very efficient He looked like he looked more in control in the pocket. He looked like he was more comfortable. His footwork looked better. He was able to stand in the pocket despite sometimes a fierce rush and just make a throw and take a hit. Where sometimes Kaepernick will wait for a guy to be open and then just try to sling it in there. But a lot of times when that doesn't happen, he'll take a sack or he'll just, hop outside the pocket. Whereas Gabbert looked a little bit more in control in some areas. Now, I don't think anybody is going to mistake Blaine Gabbert for a great quarterback or someone that we can even think about the 49ers building around for the future. However, it was encouraging to see at least, he didn't look the way he did against Jacksonville. He looked like a better quarterback. So hopefully we'll see more of that going forward.
That's true. And, and a credit to Blaine Gabbert, one thing that I forgot is that he is actually a decent runner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's not a Michael Vick, but he is actually a quality runner with the ball. And one thing that he brought into the game that we've talked about in conversation, over the weeks, is that the 49ers should run more timing routes, 3, 5, 7-step drops, drop back, stand in the pocket, protect the quarterback, and sling it.
Right.
And what he did is he stood in there and even based on his conversation, after the game, he knew he was going to get hit in the chin a few times, but he stood in the pocket, trusting the process, trusting the receivers, the tight end, tight ends getting open, and he stood in that pocket and he threw those timing routes and completed a lot of them. So he really was efficient in his production and his work in that game, and it proved to be valuable. And the 49ers got enough running game from John that he performed. I had never heard of him personally, but prior to but he really ran well. He didn't have any obviously didn't have 100 yards rushing, but the rushing that he did have, it was quality runs and quality production that really helped out the passing game of that offense, which allowed Gabbert to really be productive. And the offensive line really protected him decently well enough for him to take advantage of, the few runs that he did run that were productive, and threw the ball just, in my opinion, extremely well after not thinking that he would be very productive in the game.
Oh, that's absolutely right. You started touching on the offensive line. Joe Staley and Alex Boone. Boone has had some troubles this year, just like he did last year. But obviously, the left side is still pretty much intact. Center Marcus Martin, unfortunately, there were a number of plays that he got blown off the ball. He got pushed so far in the backfield on a few plays. It's kind of like what we witnessed last year with Jonathan Martin on the right side of the line. He's having a really, really tough time back there. The Niners really can't. Daniel Kilgore's return can't come soon enough to kind of salvage that center position. But where I was encouraged was the play at right guard. Jordan Debbie started the game, which I don't know how in the world he can even get in the game right now, but he started the game. But Andrew Tiller played almost all the snaps, and Pro Football Focus had him rated at plus 3.1, which was the highest of, I think, any game this season for right guard. He had a really good game. And the other thing that they were doing, which I don't understand why they weren't doing this when Kaepernick was the quarterback, but at least they finally made the change, is they realized Debbie wasn't working out, so they even moved Eric Pierce to right guard at some point and played rookie right tackle Trenton Brown, which a lot of people have been calling for, hey, if the season is going like this, why not start playing the young guys? And so it was kind of good to see 7th-round pick Trenton Brown get in there. He's a big man, 6'8", he's like 360. He's a really big man. And, overall, the play of the right side was a little bit better. Now, granted, keep it in perspective, Atlanta may not have the best defense, but it was still good to see.
That's true, but Atlanta came in one of the favorites, in the NFC. When you have a rusher like Devontae Freeman come in and been killing the league over the last 7 or so weeks, and leading the league in rushing, so that's not a slouch. And when you've got an offense that's throwing for over 300 yards in this game against the 49ers, that's not a slouch offense. And the defense has been playing well enough prior to this game for Atlanta to be 6-2. So they were definitely, one of the NFC South favorites. So not a slouch of a team for the 49ers to come out and be productive and win. But I think, again, Sedlick at tight end played well. They, both touchdowns that the tight end scored, Sedlick, were on third down conversion. And we talked about this preseason, during the earlier part of the season, that you got to convert third downs to give yourself a chance to be successful, and you got to be able to score in the red zone. And for the 49ers, those two scores to be third down conversions, man, that says a lot. That says extremely lot about, some progression of this team. Now, it's not an NFC West favorite right now, but we got to take what we can get, and we got to start dissecting and seeing the production that is being made, because that's where this team is now. They're not all of a sudden going to make the playoffs right now. I don't see that. So we've got to take and start building upon, these young players, because when you take, and I go back to those 3 secondary players have a lot of pride, an extremely amount of pride in themselves. So what we used to say was, when a player goes down, next man up. And you got to believe that there's not going to be a drop-off, because we're all professionals, and you're here for a purpose, and you've got to step in and make a play. And what those guys did in that secondary was very, very impressive. If I can recall back in the preseason, we talked about we didn't know which defensive backs, especially at the one corner, would step up. And, although there was a number of great projects, we talked about if these guys improved the way we thought they could, it was going to increase an extremely a great amount of depth for the 49ers. What I'm seeing now, although we're 7-8 weeks into the season, going into the bye week, what was proved to me last week is the depth that we talked about in the preseason at that cornerback spot. Oh, man, the 49ers, their future is bright, because these guys have a great amount of pride. They were waiting for their opportunity to get in there and play, and they did an extreme great job, in my opinion, where they came in there and performed.
Yeah, I think so too. It looked like Julio Jones. In my opinion, him and Antonio Brown are the 2 best receivers in football, and there's a couple other ones that are right there too. But Julio Jones is the beast. I mean, you don't just shut down Julio Jones.
I agree.
It looked to me like they were playing a lot of zone, which that's probably what you got to do. It's probably smart play. But Julio Jones is a veteran. He's savvy. He knows how to find the soft spots in the zone. Matt Ryan's a good quarterback. It looked like they had some timing routes, and he was able to break free a few times. So I'm not going to fault the defensive backs too much on that. I think overall, when they had to make plays, I saw them knocking down passes on third down. They were able to get off the field a number of times and prevent the Falcons from, extending a lead or, getting a big lead at any point in that game. And like we were talking about before, Devontae Freeman was leading the league in rushing, and they held him to 12 yards on 12 carries. And Atlanta, for some reason, abandoned the run. They were able to find some success in the air. But even then, they really didn't get a lot of success against this defense, which, if you were to just look at the roster going into this game based on the injuries, you would have thought the Falcons would have been able to put up like 31 points.
I totally agree. And, again, they had a great game plan, but it comes down to heart. And it comes down to what does this mean to me? Am I going to take advantage of my opportunity? And again, for any player to find out during the week or the day before or the day of the game that you're going to be activated on the squad, or you're even going to start that week, or in one case, pre-game you're going to start. That just says a lot to me. What it says is these guys have been waiting for an opportunity to show their worth and their value. And when your livelihood is dependent upon this, then you reflect back on quality work in the film room, quality work when you're on scout team, practice squad, or whatever work you got that you focused on it. Because I call it mental reps. When you're not a starter and you got to sit back and you got to watch, you got to make sure you're taking mental reps. You got to listen to what coaches are saying, and you got to pay attention to the details of what other players are doing on the field. So if an opportunity comes, nobody's going to take an excuse that, oh, you know what, I didn't get much work in practice that week. They don't care about that. So you got to be a professional. And what it seems to me and what it showed to me is that these guys are true professionals, and they were paying attention when they weren't even getting reps. And that shows in the productivity of what they were able to do this week. And at the end of the day, even though passes get completed on you, and they did knock down and bat down a number of those passes, but the one thing you can't teach is tackling in the run game or tackling after a catch. And I'm going back again, I've said it I think 3 times already, for defensive backs to be 3 of your top 4 tacklers in a ball game, and they're all reserve corners, that says a lot about these guys' preparation and taking advantage of the moment and showing what their worth really is.
Totally agree. I was happy with a number of players on the defense. And another guy that really stood out to me was Navarro Bowman. There was a lot of talk early on that they rushed him back and that he wasn't the same player. I saw a really nasty article from a beat writer who I don't really want to name because he's not one of my favorites. But he wrote an article basically about how Navarro Bowman's a scrub. And it's like, that's ridiculous. And I think the last 2 weeks, Navarro Bowman has showed that he's starting to turn a corner. On Sunday, he looks like the old Navarro Bowman. His range was there. I saw a couple of plays where he just shot through the line and stuffed Devontae Freeman in the backfield, both on the run and the pass. He looked like the Navarro Bowman that we saw in 2013, where he very well could have been defensive MVP and probably should have been. He had better numbers than Luke Kuechly that year, by the way. But anyways, it was really good to see Navarro Bowman play the way that he is, and he's still young enough that they can build around him.
Yes, and one thing about Navarro is that he's still the leader of that defense. And players are looking for him to make plays like that. So for him to have one of the best games that he's had, and for the younger guys to look up to him and emulate what he's doing, it makes a big, big time difference. So when we get back, or the Niners get back, guys that were hurt, and if Navarro can keep doing what he's doing, and those younger guys can keep at the corner position, can keep getting the experience that they're getting, Reed needs to stay consistent, back there to safety position, making the plays that he's making. We never know with this bye week coming up at the right time and the 49ers going with confidence. You know what? They can go on a run. Now, I still feel, from an offensive perspective, if Hyde is able to come back, if he's not, then you know what? He's your future. You got to make sure he's healed moving forward for next year. But hopefully he can come back, and play well, or Bush comes back, and I think at some point, I still think Cap is the future. I really do. I do believe he needs a break, but he's got to make sure that his confidence stays intact moving forward. So coming back after the bye week, I do think, Gabbert didn't do anything to take him out right now. But I do believe, Gabbert shouldn't lose his starting position, for the long term. But this team could go on a run, it changes their draft position. But I think more than anything, they got some good young players to build upon, and I think it's more important to gain confidence moving forward than it is to keep losing and then, have a higher draft position.
Yeah, you definitely want to see, you know how it is. Success breeds success. And it's hard to go through. You don't want to go through. I mean, I didn't play the game, but I gotta believe, we're all human. No one wants to lose, and going 2-14, I don't think makes us better, than going 6-10, even with a higher draft pick. I mean, because draft picks, you don't really always know what you got with a draft pick, and I'd like to see them being able to identify pieces to build around. And this is probably, is it possible that they could go on a bit of a run and make some noise and, be exciting the rest of the year? Yeah, it's possible. There are some favorable matchups. The next one's going to be really tough. But, it's possible we're going to be able to identify players that they can build around and, still have some short-term successes and at least find guys that will be on the team next year and hopefully be able to build upon this year. I'm hoping that it's not going to be false hope, that we'll have, some favorable matchups, and then we'll all be thinking I hope it's not false hope, but I do believe that there's a lot of good players on this team. I do believe Trent Baalke has drafted a lot of good players. I mean, I know that there are some areas, in the first and second round that just haven't quite worked out. I mean, Vance McDonald, no question. I thought he was going to be really, really good, and he's turned out to be definitely not what we thought. Garrett Selleck has been the more productive tight end. Vance McDonald's still dropping a lot of passes, and it's disappointing to watch. But there are still a lot of very good players on this team, and I'm thinking, as we go down the road, it looks like Blaine Gabbert is going to be the starter this week. I'm pretty sure I read that Tom Sula has named him the starter against Seattle. And, as we move into the next part, as where we talk about the Seattle game, now obviously next week is a bye week. They're going to get some guys back. I believe Anquan Bolden's going to be back. Tremaine Brock and Kenneth Acker are probably going to be back. There might be a couple other guys. I don't know about Hyde, but I think Daniel Kilgore might be back. If Daniel Kilgore is back, that could really solidify the line because I think Andrew Tiller has taken the job of the right guard. That could really help things. Now, going in against Seattle, I don't know what your take is on it. Of course, I want to see them go in and win. That's a really tall order. I think, to me, what would really encourage Niner fans everywhere is if this was a competitive game. If this was a time where even if they could be taking the lead into the fourth quarter, even if they lose, they have not played well in Seattle since Alex Smith. And that was a really tight game. Ever since then, they have not played well in Seattle. They've gotten blown away the last 3 years. And then they did play well in the championship game, but that's another story. So I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm really hoping they can just at least have a competitive game.
Right. I think the biggest hope and biggest challenge that we hope to envision is an improved offensive line that can at least limit Bennett and Averill, those defensive linemen of Seattle. I think those are still going to be the key. It was a key in the last game. It's going to be a key in this game. If that improvement can be shown and not necessarily neutralized, because those guys are good and they're going to make their plays, but if Drawn can, be productive somewhat in the running game, I believe defense is going to be okay over there. They've got to do their work now, because just like Ryan got his numbers Russell is probably going to get his numbers. But I tell you, those young guys in that secondary proved to me that, you know what, they're going to battle. And if they replicate what they did in this past game, then I think Navarro and those other guys are going to pull their fair share, to be productive over there. But on the offensive side, it's going to come down to that offensive line. But Gabbert, if he stays, he threw 2 interceptions. You take those 2 interceptions away, and if he's interception-free in this Seattle game, I think he gives the offense a chance to be more successful, because the success of the tight end was key in this game against the Falcons. It would be interesting to see how they're going to use the tight end against Seattle. But if we can get a similar production, minimizing the turnovers, and being successful on third down, which allows us to get in the red zone and hopefully convert into touchdowns instead of just field goals, I think the 49ers got a good chance of being in the ball game. I really do.
Yeah, I think so too. One of the interceptions was Gabbert's fault, but the first one was not. That was, Jerome Simpson dropped a really easy pass that Gabbert put right in the numbers. It bounced around, and then the defensive back ended up making a good play. That one was definitely not his fault, but the other one was he just made a bad throw. It happens. But, if they can, like you said, if they can limit that, when you go into Seattle, Aaron Rodgers had to play perfect. And he put up 2 interceptions. That guy almost never throws interceptions. Teams make mistakes when they play against Seattle. You almost have to play perfect up there. It's just the nature of the beast. Now, I don't know if this Seattle team is the same. They don't seem to have their swagger, but you never know. They're coming off their bye week. They could be ready to make their run. You don't know what's going to happen, but I think, like what we talked about, if they're able to run effectively, if the offensive line can play well, I'm also liking what I'm seeing out of Quentin Patton. He seems to be emerging a little bit. He's getting open. He's catching the ball. He's not making the mental mistakes that he was making last year and the year before. And Bruce Ellington's a weapon. They're going to have Bolden back. Blaine Gabbert was not afraid to throw towards Torrey Smith, which was really nice to see. And, Garrett Flex, a good tight end, they have guys on offense. You just hope that they can kind of put it together and get some points on the board and then just limit Seattle. If they're in this game, especially if they could get any kind of a lead in the fourth quarter, even if they don't win the game, I'm going to feel pretty good. That's improvement to me.
Yeah, I agree too. And I like the way Ellington played in the game. I think he had a punt return, 17-yard punt return, and then he had 2 kickoff returns, I believe was a 35-yard average. And then he got his hands on a couple of passes, not much production yardage-wise, and then I think he had a rush or 2. So I think, you try to get the ball to him in space even more than that, just to give, a little more electrified possibilities out of your offense. But I agree from the perspective of if they have similar production, from Gabbert in this here game and, the offense in general, we don't want to say, if we stay close, that's a win for us. But in a sense, just be competitive and have a chance at the end of the ball game to win it. I think,
exactly.
The 49ers, that 12th man makes a difference in a lot of situations there in Seattle. But I think this game that the 49ers just played, man, what a confidence builder it is for them. So it's a great team after the bye to come and play in Seattle to see where will the 49ers attitude be when they come back and go into Seattle to play this here game.
Oh, definitely. And that's the other thing. You got to believe that guys like Navarro Bowman and Anquan Bolden are going to have these guys fired up. It was good to see emotion out there, the extra hustle. You can tell guys are not tanking. They're not trying to throw the season away just to get a draft pick. You can tell they're trying. And I think who doesn't want to see that? I think that's a really, really good thing to see.
Yeah, and what I like is even when Atlanta made plays, the 49ers you didn't see them tank. So
Right.
that was a big time positive for me as I continued to watch over and over. Even in the end when Matty Ice, is the fourth quarter, comeback kid. The 49ers found a way to neutralize him and the Falcon team and pull out the victory. So I got to give credit where credit is due, and those guys really raised their game at the right time.
Definitely. It was encouraging. I thought they played inspired ball. I do believe that I don't think the Niners are going to look as lackadaisical against Seattle this coming week as they did the first time they played them, and also against St. Louis, where they just did not look like their head was in the game. And I think, and maybe some of that is Blaine Gabbert. The team just kind of rallying around him a little bit. Maybe it's some of the young blood that's come in, like we talked about, a combination of the two. I think they're going to look a little bit better than they have against Seattle like in years past. And just because I think they're just going to play a little bit different style of ball and, see what happens. Obviously the odds are that Seattle's going to be able to make more plays, but you just never know. You give yourself a chance to win. You don't know how the ball's going to roll or, what bounces are going to go your way. So we'll see what happens on that. Going forward, though, honestly, I don't know what the 49ers do in the off season as far as, do they move on from Kaepernick? Do they go with Blaine Gabbert? Do they draft somebody? I think at this point, that's where a lot of 49ers fans, there's a lot of chatter out there. What are they going to do? Where are we at? And I don't know your take on it. I guess I'm kind of one of these cross that bridge when we get there kind of guys. I think I'm more concerned with the here and now, taking one game at a time and not worrying too much about, who's going to be with us next year, who's going to step up, who's going to be the favorite of management to, be the starter at this position and that position. I mean, I'm just kind of one of these live in the moment guys. I mean, obviously I think about the future, but I think I'm more of a take 1 week at a time kind of guy. I don't know what your take is on it.
Well, I think, although this was a nice win, I don't think that it should be overlooked that, in my opinion, there's still a bigger issue here. And we shouldn't put blinders on to the fact that there are some issues within the front office that need to be fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Balky, whether it's York, whether it's staff, regardless of what it is, you can't let that change the focus of what was a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before. That there's some things that got to be ironed out, straightened out, and fixed, because all you're doing is you always want a great foundation. So when things falter, you stick with your plan, and eventually the shit will be righted. But right now, I just think there's still some things unsettled that they need to figure out what direction they're going, not just from personnel perspective where the team is concerned, players, but where they're going from a personnel position where management is concerned. That's got to be ironed out and fixed. They're either going to stay the same where they are and repeat the same mistakes and processes that have gone on before. Those things have to be fixed. So I don't know what that's going to be, if it's going to be anything, but I don't think that's something that can be forgotten about.
No question. The front office, there is an issue there. And I don't know what can be done. I don't think Jed York's going to sell the team, but the York family is going to be around. There's no really getting rid of Jed York as much as a lot of fans would probably like to do. But I don't know at what point. I don't know if it is Trent Baalke. I believe he is a good GM. Obviously we can point to, possibly some mistakes there, but what GM hasn't made some mistakes? The coaching staff, I'm not really sure about yet either. So obviously you're right. We can't just ignore front office and the foundation. I don't know if any of that is going to change in the off season. And so it's like, well, all right, well, how do you look forward if the foundation isn't going to change? They're probably going to stick with what they've got just as a pride thing. At least that's how it looks.
Right. And whenever I make note of that obvious point there, sometimes it's not necessarily getting rid of somebody. Maybe it's a restructuring or just let's sit down at the table and let's figure out, this thing again. Because what I thought in this game, when you talked about Balky a number of times pertaining to signings that he's made, because the process is, the scouting staff goes out and they evaluate players, and at the end of the day, it's got to be approved either by the head coach or the GM. So when I look at what I've talked about earlier about the production of 3 cornerbacks that really weren't even, well, they were in the picture, but, they weren't starters and some were on the practice squad. I still have to give credit to those decision makers, the GM. I mean, because they're the ones that had to okay these guys. So they saw something in Johnson. They saw something in Ward. They saw something in Cromartie. So I got to give Balky credit, that, one, I'm seeing some young players. I'm seeing, production out of the tight end. And somebody had to make a decision, to bring Gabbard in. I thought San Francisco made a mistake whenever they brought him in as a backup quarterback, even though I saw some glimpses of greatness out of him. But I also saw, 4 or 5 years of, maybe it's Jacksonville that just took his heart. I don't know. But then he comes in a reserve position and plays well last week. So I can't, say 2 things. I can't say, Balky has to go and then, compliment, the players that he brought in that, are playing well when they get the opportunity. So I don't have the answer. I just know that this team, is better than they've played. Although, again, go back to the preseason. One reason I said they will be 500 is because, again, when you lose the number of players to retirement, etc., during the off season, no team, without just totally surprising me, can have a great year. So, at the end of the day, we might evaluate and say, you know what, maybe it's just because of all those losses. And it's hard to just come back from those losses, in just 1 year. So, all of us jump to conclusions and have our own opinions, but we hope the players that we do have can get out there when they get their opportunity and shine and produce. And for whatever reason, injuries may have contributed to the low production, but we've got guys down now, and some guys stepped up and are producing. And the last point I want to make on production of this team is I still say we're 1 or 2 offensive linemen away. They may be on this squad that have yet to develop the way these 3 cornerbacks stepped in and produced. But Tiller is one of those that I think is a player, but they may be a player or 2 away, and it may be a draft choice away. So maybe it's as simple as that.
Could be.
I'm not the one to say, hey, someone needs to be excluded from the organization like a GM, bring another one in. There's too many people that said that Balky actually is a good GM, and he's made some good decisions. So I just think as any job, especially professional athletes, every personnel, player or organization is under constant evaluation. And I think, at the end of the season, all that should be evaluated, and the best decision should be made for the organization to move forward.
Yeah, no question about it. You can't. You have to look at the team as a whole, and the 49ers were not all of a sudden, this really great squad in 2009 and 2010, and then Jim Harbaugh got there and just coached that team to the championship games. No, they were put together because of the decisions that were made by Trent Baalke. He was a GM, he had a fantastic draft in 2011. Obviously, the 2012 draft was bad. I don't think there's anybody that would argue otherwise. There's not a player on that team that's even on the team. I don't even know that there's too many of those guys that are even in the league right now. It was a bad draft. There's no question. And that does happen. Even the great GMs, you can have a bad draft. But the 2013 and the 2014 drafts, I think these are pretty good drafts. Especially given, like you talked about, these retirements and the personnel moves that happen in the offseason to even be competitive at times with when you're throwing young guys in there. I mean, these are some good young players that are finally getting their chance to shine. And some of them are definitely stepping up. And they were drafted by Trent Baalke. I don't think anybody's going to quibble with a fifth-round pick, finding Aaron Lynch in the fifth round. That's a good pick. I know that some of the draft picks didn't pan out, but, I think overall Trent Baalke's a good GM. It's difficult when you start talking about the coaching position. I'm not really sure about this staff, but I really do believe the overall roster is a talented roster. It's a young roster, and I think, if they could have a good offseason this year, no distractions, a good draft, maybe a couple free agent pickups, and just kind of build, you just don't know. You just don't know that, they might not be this horrible team that so many people say that they are. Is like you said, a lot of this could be the result of just the off season. It was a really bad off season, and you don't just waltz in. I thought they had a potential to go 10-6, but we knew it wasn't going to be a shoo-in. To me, it was predicated on a fast start. Once they didn't have that fast start, I was like, well, all right, this is going to be really tough to even make it to 500. But it's just one of those years, and you don't really know. There's still unknowns at this point. I mean, I don't think anybody can just come out and claim they have all the answers, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the off season. So I'm just kind of looking at it at this point, week to week, and at this point, with what I saw on Sunday and what could possibly be happening going forward, I see potential for a decent game not this week, but the following week against Seattle.
Yeah, I agree. And, you can look at the 49ers and the season that they're having, but you can look at the NFC East alone, and the majority of the teams in the NFL, other than I believe we're down to, 4 undefeated teams? But
I think we're down to 3 because Denver lost.
Yeah, that's true. 3. Other than those 3 teams, and then Denver, who just lost their first one, the majority of the teams aren't playing very well for one reason or the other. So this is just one of those years. And next year really could be totally different, but we've got an NFC East that I think each team, is like 3 and, either 2 and 5 or 3 and 4 or something like that. So for one reason or the other, it is what it is. So, an off season can change all that for all of these teams. So the 49ers just need to stay, keep their head to the ground right now. And I say enjoy the moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
The moment, especially after the season, they've had so far, and totally be optimistic and positive. And, again, next man up, and just keep getting better and better, because this team, when you think about it, is still very, very young. So there are a lot of players probably on this team other than the three defensive players that we've already talked about, that still could step up to the plate and be quality players. So they just got to believe that when they get the opportunity, even though they haven't played or haven't played well at this point, that they are players, that they belong in the league. And it's all going to be predicated on, coaching, performance by these players, and continuous good decision making by, management. So I'm not the one to make those decisions right now, but I just know that what I saw against the Falcons showed me that it's not like the Falcons came here and laid an egg, or went to Santa Clara and laid an egg. San Francisco played well overall and beat a good team.
Yep. I think that's the best way to look at it. So, we'll take it 1 week at a time, and, we'll see what happens, and, we'll go from there. I'm hoping to watch some good football, and, like you said, there's so many teams that are not playing well, teams that were expected to play well that are not playing well. So, yeah, I think everything you said is right on. Hope to see improvement. Like you said, hope the players just kind of enjoy the moment, make the most of their opportunities, and hey, you never know what can happen. And that's how the NFL is. Things can, fortunes can turn very fast one way or the other. So you just never know.
Totally agree. Enjoy this bye week, and then let's come back in 2 weeks, and and hope that we've come off of a Seattle win.
Absolutely. Well, later on this week, our NFL show. Yesterday we had the NFL Pick'em show. Tomorrow we're going to be doing. Mike Goodpasture and I are going to be doing our NFL midseason awards show, just a short show on, kind of where we're at midseason, and give out kind of our MVP awards so far, who we think is deserving of all the awards at this point. I know there's going to be a boxing show on Friday, and we'll be getting right back to the Pick'em show next week. Next week we won't have a 49ers show due to the bye week. But like you said, in 2 weeks we'll come back. We'll talk about the Seattle game, and then we'll preview. They'll be hosting Arizona after that. So with that, on behalf of Dexter Carter, Matt Andruscavage for the 49er Weekly Show, The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.